Hey guys, it's Scott with Scotty B Cards, and in this video, I want to talk about the importance of a balanced sports card portfolio. So obviously we can view sports cards as a collection or as an alternative investment. But one thing that we do wrong with sports card occasionally is fall in love with one specific or two specific players, and 90% of our collection value is there. And if we're looking at this as an investment, it's important to have your collection diversified enough where if that one player gets hurt, something happens to him, your collection's not going to drop 50% in a year. And that's kind of the whole point of diversification in investing of itself, is you want to have different types of assets so that way you're not hedging. Hedging is like if one specific event happens, one side of your portfolio will do good, the other side will do bad. So it like levels itself out. But diversification is basically you have not all your eggs in one basket. You have a couple different baskets with a certain number of eggs in them. And I'm not saying I'm the best at this, but it's important if you are literally viewing collecting as an investment. Again, I personally am more of a collector, but I still see the importance of wanting your cards to go up in value. So I see exercises like this as important as well. So I just want to show you a couple reasons and a couple things you should worry about if you're over investing in a certain player, and then I'll talk about how I avoid this myself and give some tips on that. So the very first thing I want to say, injuries can kill a career. Let's look at Grady Sizemore. In the early 2000s, Grady Sizemore was awesome. He essentially was on not a Hall of Fame path, but you could argue it. By age 25, he already had 25.7 WAR. Again, the average Hall of Famer has around 55 to 65 WAR. WAR is not everything, I understand that, but he also had all-star appearances, MVP votes every year, Gold Gloves and Silver Sluggers. His numbers were great. So it wasn't just WAR for Grady Sizemore. He was a good player. And you can see most similar by ages, it was Duke Snider, Mookie Betts, Barry Bonds. And then all of a sudden he turns into not as good of players. So what happened to Grady Sizemore after his age 25 season? You can see he ended up with 27.8 WAR. He only gained hardly any value for the rest of his career. He missed a year completely to injury. He just wasn't the same player. And this is important because this can happen to anybody. This is happening to Mike Trout, it feels like right now. I'm sure he's going to be fine next year. But the point is, players can just sometimes have injuries that hurt their career paths. Next up is leaving the game early. The best example of this is Andrew Luck. He left for personal reasons. You saw Buster Posey just barely do the exact same thing. Luckily, Buster Posey's far enough in his career where it probably wouldn't make a difference for his Hall of Fame case. He might have a couple more counting stats, but that's about it. But with Andrew Luck, he was at the end of the 2018 season heading into 2019. You can see he was viewed as the number 2 quarterback in football. And then he did not play another game in professional football, which is a real bummer. And you can see now his Prism Silver rookie, which is the big one. This is the first year Prism. It's $20. His Silver Prism autograph, $52. His variation, $18. It's just once that player doesn't achieve what people are speculating, their values can collapse. You're seeing that with Patrick Mahomes. I think people are reacting way too crazily on Patrick Mahomes. Yeah, he had a bad couple games, but he's going to be fine. But the point is, people like Andrew Luck can just leave the game. It's their job. They are not our servants of a sport. It's literally their job. And so if they decide to retire early, that's their decision. But it's still something we need to be concerned about with our sports cards. The next one is athletes are not immune to tragedy. So this is Thurman Munson. He was a great catcher and then he tragically passed away. The reason I included Thurman Munson is because he was on a Hall of Fame path. He won an MVP. You can see JAWS is a measurement that takes peak career WAR and total WAR and says how valuable that player was. He's 12th all time in JAWS. Basically, he is the one player that did make the Hall of Fame. He's like right at the cutoff. He's actually ahead of Buster Posey. I know Buster Posey's great and has a lot of achievements, but so did Thurman Munson. And on top of that, Joe Mauer kind of slipped on number 7, just saying. But anyways, so Thurman Munson, he passed away and he didn't make the Hall of Fame. Nobody was collecting or investing as much back in the 70s as we are now. But the point remains that this could happen to all-star type players. There have been 13 players in Major League Baseball since 2000 who have died during their playing careers. The most recent was Tyler Skaggs, and probably the most impactful on collectors was Jose Fernandez. He was 24 when he passed away, and he was viewed as the pitcher of the future. If he wouldn't have passed away, that Miami Marlins team would have been very different with Giancarlo Stanton, Marcell Ozuna, Christian Yelich, D. Gordon. You know, it was a great team. And if he could have continued his actual path to becoming an ace, which he was kind of there already, then on top of that, the team would have been better and everybody wouldn't have been traded wherever they went and so forth. So people can pass away and it's tragic, but it's one of those things where, again, they are people. They're not just robot entertainers. And so that's something you need to consider as well, and not having too much of one player in your collection. Next up are personal issues. We've seen this with Marcell Ozuna himself. You can read what he did, but he did some things that basically might ban him completely from Major League Baseball forever. Same with Trevor Bauer. So you can see like before Trevor Bauer actually had these issues. He was around $80 to $160 for his Bowman Chromatograph. Now you're lucky if you can break $40 for his Bowman Chromatograph. And that's within a 6-month swing. That can kill your card values. Here's a gold Marcell Ozuna, true flagship rookie, which usually can go for a lot. And this did not sell. No one wanted it for 99 cents and it was relisted. It's just one of those things. This is one of the biggest killers for modern sports cards. So lastly is early aging. And you're probably wondering, why do I have Sandy Koufax on the screen? He's a Hall of Famer. But you can see Sandy Koufax before the age of 25 was not like, he was good, but he wasn't Sandy Koufax, if that makes sense. And then from 25 to 30, he had a 6-season dominance that is up there with anybody in like any peaks in Major League Baseball history. A lot of black. Black means he led the league in that statistic. He has 3 Cy Youngs and MVP in that 6-year period. But then he abruptly ended. He was injured, so I could put him with the Grady Sizemore category, but it's still one of those things. Early in his career, he was done. He would just stop pitching. And it hasn't affected this one specific player, but it was one player that I thought was evident enough where we could talk about Sandy Koufax and really see an abrupt end to his career. And over here on the right, you're gonna see some charts. And what this is, WRC Plus is a version of how you can compare a player to league average. It's like OPS Plus. OPS Plus is off of the OPS of a player compared to league average. WRC Plus is not. It's based off of on-base percentage weighted. You get the whole point. It's just a different, more accurate representation of how good a player is compared to league average. 100 is league average. So in 2002 to 2009, when you hit age 30, you're right around league average. And as you age to age 40, you went above league average. But now if you look at today, you go above league average around 30, and then you literally trail off. And the main difference between these 2 decades is steroids. Just one of those things. Steroids are gone. Players don't age like we were used to 2 decades ago. Even this last decade, I don't think people are going to be aging quite the same. Peaks are getting earlier and earlier. We're seeing that with Juan Soto, Ronald Acuna, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Wander Franco. He's not in his peak yet, but he's going to be. He just got a $200-something million contract. But people like Mike Trout, Mookie Betts, and so forth may have some uglier aging curves because they may not be using some performance-enhancing drugs to help them maintain health. So early aging is a very important thing you want to look at. For example, I have a lot of Mookie Betts and Mike Trout. You'll see that in just a second. And it makes you wonder, should I start selling some of it and investing in younger players? So this is my portfolio. So I took the actual dollar value of each compared to the total dollar value of what my entire collection is worth. Right here is vintage golf cards. It's like 2%. And this is Acuna, Tatis, and some other player. But the point is, you can see I have 27.5% of my total value in Mike Trout, 32% my total value in Mookie Betts. I have only 12% in vintage, 10% in Juan Soto, 3.3 in Arenado, 2 in Lindor, basically 2 in Harper, 4% in pitchers between Kershaw, Scherzer, DeGrom, and so forth. And then all the other players combined is about 3.6%. And the reason I broke this down is because I wanted to visualize exactly where the money in my collection was sitting. And for me, right now, Mookie Betts and Mike Trout, like Mookie Betts had 4.3, 4.2 WAR season, which is still good, but it's not a Mookie Betts type season, so his cards did drop. Mike Trout didn't really play because of injury. Juan Soto and vintage really boosted up my collection. So even though these 2, Mookie Betts and Mike Trout, dropped, Juan Soto and vintage picked up enough where it actually was helpful for me. And earlier this year, Francisco Lindor and Nolan Arenado had a much bigger portion of my personal collection, but I sold some of them to invest more into Juan Soto, which was the right call just because of the aging curve I was talking about. So here's an example of what happened to my collection. Mike Trout dropped 22% this year of my total dollar value. Mookie Betts was down almost 15%, but my vintage was up 215%. Juan Soto was up 30%. Lindor was down 33%. That's a big drop in like 9 months. This is from January 1 of 2021. And Nolan Arenado, my collection is down 21%. So again, realistically, this vintage section, if I want to be a true sports card investor, should be a lot bigger, 30, 40%. I'm not going to tell you exactly what percentage your collection should be because I don't know off the top of my head, but you can actually do the same type of thing and you can make a graph and visualize exactly what percentage of your collection's where, and it will help you get a good idea of if you're over leveraged or over invested in a certain player. Like let's say I had 25% in Nolan Arenado and I think you might have a bad aging curve in St. Louis outside of Colorado, and so I decide to sell some. That can help. Realistically, vintage is something I should have more money invested into if I'm investing. Again, I'm not. I like my collection to increase in value, but I also have a lot of personal attachment to these players, which is tough for me to sell anything Mike Trout and Mookie Betts. The 58% of my collection is basically just sitting there because I don't want to sell it. But regardless, it's important to make sure you have money spread across because it can help save the value of your collection. So anyways, guys, that is all I have for you today. Thank you for watching. Let me know down in the comments below if there's anything you do to help make sure your collection is diversified and to make sure you're investing in the right things. Other than that, I will catch you in the next video and I'll see you later.